Well, hello again. Welcome back to Out of Touch. I don't know what you've been doing in the meantime. It's been about 2 months since we put out an episode of this.
Has it really?
It's been since December. It's actually been longer for you, Mitchell. I think Dustin and I did the last episode back at the beginning of December.
God, time flies.
I know.
I didn't realize it had
a
been
lot
that
of,
long.
and that's part of for the last couple of weeks, both myself, Mitchell, and Dustin, who I guess is unable to join us tonight, we've been trying to figure out when we could get on here and just put something together and be like, hey, we're still here. Because if we ever decide to hang this thing up, I'd like to hope that we'll just at least pop on here and be like, hey, this is our final episode. We no longer have the ability to, commit to doing this every so often. And honestly, right now, we barely have the ability to do that. But at the same time, this has always been a great way for each of us to catch up and just, yuck it up in different ways. But, a year ago, life was a lot different for all of us. And now we're all doing way different, not necessarily different things with our jobs, but our lives have shifted in so many different ways that, it's tough to get us all together in the same space at the same time.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of doing, like, you've got weird hours at work. Dustin's traveling all the time. I'm on the road all the time. It just, for whatever reason, in the last couple of months, it just is really ramped up.
Not only that, your baby's getting older. We have a baby on the way. Again, who knows what in the world Mr. Shooty's been up to? He may be up in a different country for all we know at this point.
I haven't seen or talked to him. I texted him for the first time. Just hadn't talked to him in a while. But he's the editor for Purdue now?
Yeah, he recently
Sports Illustrated?
I won't say promoted, but I think he more so took over as kind of the publisher for the Sports Illustrated site for Purdue. So shout out to him. Not so much a shout out to the Boilermakers, but we can shout out our friend Dustin, of course.
Yeah. I would never shout out the Boilermakers, but Dustin killing it is always a good thing.
Oh, man. So I want to start with this. I saw something that either you or your wife put on social media in the last 24 hours, and it looked like you all were in this venue that had this disco ball-like thing spinning around.
Oh, dude.
What was that?
Okay, so I'm going to start with, if I lose my train of thought a couple times today, just know that we had a really long weekend.
Okay.
It's my wife's 30th birthday. It was our
Happy
first
birthday
time.
to your wife.
Thank you. I'll tell her. First time out of the house for more than a couple hours without the baby. So we spent 2 nights in Cincinnati with some of our friends, and it went about how you would expect it to go when you are out without the baby for the first time.
Okay.
But yesterday we started. So apparently Cincinnati was this big, brewing town. It was the gateway to the West or whatever. Not the gateway, because that's St. Louis, but they have some other name. They have 400 million nicknames. I didn't pay attention as well as I should have to this tour guide lady, but apparently they have a rich history in breweries, and they had these big tunnels that they would hand dig that they could put the barrels in to let it ferment, because it has to ferment at 40 to 45 degrees. And if it was on the surface, that'd be too hot in Cincinnati, or too cold. It was really hard to find that sweet spot. So they'd dig 50 feet below the surface, build out these big tunnels, and then just keep the barrels down there so they could make sure that the temperature stayed cool. But then Prohibition happens. Their city hall burnt down twice in the early 1900s. So they lose all record of pretty much all of these tunnels. Then this is only within the last 10 years. There was a big corporation that bought kind of a dilapidated looking building. They knew there was some history, but they didn't really know what it was. Finally, they start to figure out that this was one of the old brewing houses. And they're like, okay, that's cool, but we need this elevator shaft, so we got to dig down so we can put the pillars or whatever to make sure it stays stable. They start digging down, and they dig straight into one of these tunnels that they didn't know was there. So then they put everything on pause, and they're like, okay, let's see if there's one, there's probably a bunch. Turns out there was a bunch.
They're
So,
like coal miners, but for
but for alcohol, yes, absolutely. They had like there was 8 square blocks. This is like early 1900s. 8 square blocks of like the main section of whatever, like it's called Over the Rhine or whatever.
Oh, is this? Did you go to Rheingeist?
So that's where we walked past. That was not where the tour was, but
Okay.
there that brewery is housed in some of the old buildings from the original brewers. Um, but there was like 1,000 drinking establishments in 8 square blocks, like levels of bars. But then prohibition happens, everything goes away. Finally, they find these tunnels in like 2014. It wasn't in the 70s. This is
Oh, so
recent.
this is
It's like
fairly new.
10 years ago.
Wow.
So we go the tour. The tour is unbelievable. Ton of fun. Later that night, we had a reservation at, it's technically a speakeasy. I don't really know what that means.
So speakeasies during Prohibition were places where people would basically drink and hide out, that sort of thing.
And speak easy, right? Like they'd speak quietly so no one knew.
Yeah, so like you
It
would
was
go
happening.
in, like there would be a place that was like a front for something else, and you
Yeah.
would tell like the shopkeeper whatever this like password or phrase is, and then they'd take you to the back and you'd go into the speakeasy.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense because the place that we went is in one of these tunnels, and it
Okay.
was much deeper. This tunnel for this bar was much deeper than the tunnel than we went to at for the first one, and it was also much bigger. The one that we toured was just two brothers that were trying to make it. It was a small and still very impressive to have these tunnels, but this one was massive. And you go down probably 5, 6, gosh, maybe more flights of stairs to get to the level. And then you walk out, and it's this little narrow bar that's very old school, like prohibition time looking aesthetic. And then you walk through, and it's got the circle booths, old school aesthetic everywhere. They got the disco ball, and then it's like there's a stage, and they have live music.
That's pretty badass.
It was the coolest bar that I've ever been to. It's called Ghost Baby. Apparently, you need. I didn't know this. We decided we were going to Cincinnati a couple months ago. The seats for this, they don't tell you who's playing. Like, not they don't give you a heads up what band is coming, and it's not ever like Taylor Swift
Like
or
a cover
something.
band or something.
So the guy yesterday did some original stuff. He did some covers. He was pretty good. Um, but this book's out like 4 months in advance. So
So
I
you've
guess
had
there's
this planned since October
yeah,
ish.
yeah, something like that. We had gone out to see him around that time. We're like, this is a pretty sweet little city. We want to come back and spend her birthday here. So she booked it immediately. Apparently, it's a really hard ticket to get, and we just hung out, listened to some music, had some espresso martinis. It was good stuff.
Anything that you have to book that far in advance, that's not like, your typical vacation. That's you're definitely in for a unique experience, I'm sure. You know what, for some reason it reminds me of, and I know it's not the exact same thing, but have you ever heard of, I don't know how many of these exist, but they're restaurants where you don't have any lighting. It's pitch dark, and I don't even know if you get to pick what you eat, but they put the food out in front of you at the table that I guess whatever you sit at, but you don't know what you're eating. It's supposed to enhance the eating experience or the senses, the taste sense, because you don't. Whenever you lose a sense, like your sight, that increases all of your other senses.
That's interesting. For a picky eater, picky eater is
I'm in that
another
band.
way.
I think we're
Yeah,
all picky eaters in some way, shape, or
yeah.
form.
I feel like saying the word picky. I'm a picky eater is more like saying I'm immature. Like I eat like a 5-year-old, and I'm okay.
Yes.
I'm okay with that. I want you to know if you're listening to this that I know that I eat like a 5-year-old. I think that I would have a hard time at a place like that where I didn't
Oh, I'd
order.
never do it. I'd
Yeah,
never do it.
because if it enhances the good, it also has
It
to
also
enhance the
enhances
bad.
the bad.
Right. Yeah. And I'm some like if I'm gonna go to a place to eat, I'm looking at the menu and making sure that I'm gonna like something. Like I don't just blindly go to restaurants. And I think a lot of people do that. They just find oh, this looks like a cool place. We'll find something we like. I go because I looked at the menu and there's something that I'm planning to order.
You're definitely not alone in that. Not even just with me, but I think a lot of people, especially people in yours and I's kind of generation, you kind of being that late millennial, and I kind of fit into millennial as well. But I mentioned before, I'm kind of the ringleader, not me specifically, but I'm kind of at that forefront of Gen Z age,
Yes.
whereas everybody younger than me is for sure Gen Z. But I feel like a lot of people in our respective generations, for some reason, we just grew up pickier eaters. I don't know if it's because there was more options for us, or if I don't want to blame it on parents, but if they were just more lenient about what they gave us. But there's a lot of people nowadays, again, that are our age that I feel like don't just eat whatever the hell's put in front of their plate or put in front of them in the table or whatever.
Yeah, there's no way I would do that. Laura's made me a lot better at it. I've
Yeah.
definitely tried some things that she'll make stuff. I mean, this is an easy one. This is not like really venturing out. This is not scallops or something or oysters.
I
But
tell you what, I tried. I don't mean to interrupt, but I tried mussels for the first
ugh,
time about a year ago, and I was surprised at how much I enjoyed those.
oh no, 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 no,
You
no.
saying scallops reminded me of that, so I wanted to point that out.
I don't eat any seafood at all. None.
Nothing, no
None.
seafood. You'd
No.
hate Louisville because we
Ugh.
have a lot of seafood.
I lived in Charleston.
That's true. You live in a coastal
Yeah.
town. A lot of
Yeah.
seafood down there, I'm sure.
Yeah, some of the best seafood you can get, and I still just I can't get behind it. I don't know. I don't like the texture, the smell, the taste. I don't like it.
Do you like
But
fish?
no,
Okay. So
like no.
nothing, not a single thing you enjoy when
I
it
take
comes
that
to
back. I like shrimp, but it has to be cooked in a very specific way.
okay. Shrimp's good.
Yeah, but raw shrimp, not a chance. Cold shrimp, you can send it wherever. Just don't send it to my house. But that's it.
Sorry, I interrupted though. You were saying what Laura likes to cook.
Oh yeah, she cooked oh gosh, like black bean burgers
Okay.
that
Yeah,
are
I've heard of
like
those. I've
they're
never
not
had one, but
actually
I know what those
meat.
are.
It was so delicious. That's something that I would never ever get at the store. So she's helping me mature, grow up.
Expand the palate a bit. I've had
Yeah,
to have that happen. I'm
yeah.
trying to. I'll eat pretty much any meat and almost any seafood, but it's other. It's everything else that I don't. I've talked about this with Dustin before. I don't know if I've talked about it with you. I'm anti sauces. I don't put ketchup on anything. No condiments. No syrup on pancakes. None of that nonsense. Give me everything dry as the Mojave, as I've said before.
Yeah,
Now I
that's
like
me.
to season stuff, but I don't put sauces on nothing.
It, the syrup on pancakes, Laura does that too, and I'm pretty sure that that's like first stage serial killer. You can't.
Don't put syrup.
She doesn't.
So I'm
Yeah,
okay. It is nice to know I'm not the only psychotic human being on the planet, though.
it makes me angry every time that she does that. And now to know that you also do that, it makes me a little bit angry. Like, what are we even doing? We're having a pancake that's terrible for me. You might as well make it taste good. If you're
Well,
gonna
you put
eat,
chocolate chips on it, put some powdered sugar. You can still flavor it up a bit.
you're gonna need a gallon of water to get that thing down.
Hey, I got a. This isn't a gallon, but I've got a cup of water with
I
me at
like
all
that that
times.
says "dad" on it.
It
That's
does. I guess I've
creative.
not showed this before, but this was a Christmas gift. Just says promoted the dad established 2025. Very simple, of course.
I
But yeah.
love it. I love it. We just found out. Speaking of, hold on. What the heck is this? That's a weird email that I just got.
It's a creepy email. Someone stalking you.
No, it was for work. But it's 7:30 on a Sunday, and we have a meeting with these people. And she didn't even ask a question. She just said, "Hey, we have a meeting this week."
Happy Sunday.
I'm
Trying to give
like,
you the Sunday scaries. Get you thinking about the week coming up.
"Yeah, I
By the
guess."
way, this will release on Thursday, so that'll already date itself, but oh well.
The meeting is on Thursday, so
Hey, so hopefully maybe this will be good luck.
I'll be in that meeting. Revitalize.
Okay. But
Whatever.
where were you trying to take the conversation before your email ever so rudely
I don't know,
interrupted you?
that just threw me off. That
We were talking about the drinking water with paint, or not putting
Oh, this
syrup
is
on
what I was gonna say.
pancakes.
So, our friends in Cincinnati this week, one up Laura's birthday, they're also having a baby. We're at the time where it feels like everyone's just popping them out.
Everybody's man, I'm trying not to say something completely disgusting, but this what happens when you get two dudes in a room sometimes. Just say banging like rabbits. Everybody's banging like rabbits.
Yeah, something like that. We started like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. There was 0 babies at our Christmas, and now there's going to be like 9.
We've gone from a few years ago 0 to mine and Alicia's baby will make it. I think 4 or 5, something along those lines. Yeah,
It does make everything more fun. Holidays
it
become
does.
more fun.
It means that the new generation is coming in. It's another sign that everybody's just getting older.
Yeah, this was pretty mean. What speaking of getting older, Laura and I, we had just put Maggie down. We were flipping
Put her
through it.
down like you didn't kill her. You didn't euthanize her.
No, sometimes when she cries at 3 a.m., you'll get there. And anyone,
Dude,
that's
I'm getting up at
knows,
3 a.m. anyway. That's one thing I think is a nice little caveat at my current schedule. I'm already getting up at the worst time of night.
That's true. I hadn't considered that. You'll be up already. So actually, what time do you get up at 3?
Normally, my first alarm, the earliest it ever goes off is 2:55, and I'm usually out of bed no later than 3:15.
So when your future little one wakes up at 2:20 and then won't go back to sleep, and in your mind you still got 40 minutes to go lay in the bed, be comfy, and she just won't go back, she or he. Hopefully, I don't know why.
She.
Yeah, it is a
You
she.
forgot. It's okay. You've had a long weekend.
Yeah, it's a she, right?
Yeah, it's a she.
Yeah. Okay. When she won't go back to bed, it's 2:20 and you're rocking her, and then you look down and it's already 2:55 and you didn't even know where any of that time went. You'll feel what I'm like, just go to sleep. But no, she goes to sleep at like 7 o'clock. So we're flipping through on Netflix, and there's a section in Netflix that's like 90s movies or something.
Okay.
It doesn't say old movies, just says 90s movies. And we're flipping through, and I can't even remember what it was, but some movie that Laura used to watch all the time when she was a kid. We click on it and watch the trailer. And the whole time, she's talking about, oh my gosh, I can't believe how old this looks. It looks so old, and the graphics and all, like, the resolution is so bad. It's so old.
But I love how you said graphics, consider like it's a video game term. We're talking movie. I just know it shows where your brain goes when you're thinking about that sort of stuff. I love it because I think the same way.
I'm a gamer. Yeah. Still am. Will be forever. But she goes on for like 3 minutes about how old it looks. Then she says, when did this get released? It says 1993. And she's like, God, that was forever ago. That is so long ago. I was born in 1993. So she spent 5 minutes unintentionally calling me old, terrible, so long ago. You've been here forever. And that's the stage of life that we're in.
Yeah.
That's
it's not quite midlife crisis, but it's the beginning of the realization that, everything that you once saw as maybe hip, that's not even the cool term to use anymore. It's just like, in style, whatever it may be, all of that is gone for our generation. There's not a single thing that we grew up enjoying that is something that kids these days, I mean, yeah, like the medium of watching a movie or playing a video game, like that is still a thing, but the manner in which we do it doesn't exist anymore.
No, this is the first time that I realized that I was completely out of touch with everything.
Just to throw out the.
Yeah, I love when that happens. That was totally unintentional too, which is
that's the best part though.
Yeah, if I was witty at all, I would have used the name of the show, but I didn't do it intentionally. When people started saying, and I'm gonna preface this, I don't know what these words mean, so if they're bad, I'm sorry. But like Sigma, Aura.
Yeah. Wait, what's the second one?
Aura. I kind of understand Aura. I know what
I heard somebody used Sigma today, but I still don't. That's all they said was Sigma, and I had no idea what the context was.
No clue. And then there's another one that I can't remember. Gosh dang it. Whatever. But that's like the new lingo that and I'm like, dude, I also I think this is chapter 2 of getting old. I don't care what it means. I
Yeah.
have no desire to figure out what that is.
There was a term that I would say a friend of mine, but it's more of a mentor of mine. The person I worked underneath of whenever I was an intern in radio, they used the phrase getting off the pop culture highway, like when that was. And I love that term because eventually you just see something, you're like, this isn't for me. Get off of the next exit. And then that's it. You don't care about it anymore.
I'm so off the highway. I'm not even
For
in
me,
the
it was
suburbs
TikTok.
anymore.
Once TikTok came around,
Same.
I couldn't get into it.
I'm out. They killed the best app ever invented in Vine.
Yeah,
Vine is
that's
the
true.
best app ever made. The originality and like true talent you had to have to be funny in 6 seconds
That's true. Like, and now
is
TikTok.
immense.
Here's the thing with TikTok. It was kind of fun whenever things could be no longer than a minute, but now that you just make things as long as a YouTube video, it's my attention span. I've learned that it really is declining because I can't deal with anything that is much longer than 60 seconds on TikTok.
The only thing that I can watch is video game stuff. I fall asleep to YouTube videos of streamers, which I think is
Same.
a 15-year-old thing to do.
So as somebody who now regularly takes afternoon naps with my schedule, which that probably won't be a thing when I have a kid. That's something
No,
you can
will
throw
not.
in my face. That'll go away. So
Yes,
I'll
it
enjoy
will.
that for the next few months while that's still a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always turning on a streamer and immediately falling asleep. That's how I fall asleep in the middle of the afternoon now.
Who are you watching these days?
I still love Coney. I think I mentioned him before. It's not that I'm picky. I just don't venture out past things I normally watch when it comes to that sort of thing.
I like it. What's he playing? What kind of stuff does he do?
He does all sorts of random nonsense. It's a gaming streamer, of course.
Yeah.
But he kind of specializes in like Smash Brothers. I don't watch that all the time, but that's what he like got known for.
Interesting. Is there a big contingent of people that are still playing Super Smash all the time?
Like where I live, or do you just mean in general?
Like in general, because I feel like that's a really fun game to play when you've got 4 buddies at your house. But I'm not.
Yes.
Like it's hard to tell a story with Smash Bros. Like
so I was never somebody who was very good at Smash, or maybe I'm not understanding the question. You're asking me how I enjoy him or how
a lot of these streamers, like the best streamers are able to create
they're not even really talking about the content. They're just telling stories like you're saying.
Well, and they're trying to create a story with what they're playing, whether it's Rainbow Six Siege or Warzone or Minecraft or whatever they're doing. Like there's some kind of storyline that they can build. But with Smash Bros, I feel like that's kind of hard because it doesn't follow a linear path and you can beat it pretty quickly. So
a lot of times he'll tell stories about when he used to play competitively because he doesn't do that anymore. He does like commentating for it on the side.
Yeah.
And a lot of his stories when it comes to that sort of thing, it's usually just what it was like back whenever, because he grew up playing like the Melee, back whenever that was on the GameCube and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's and then he also just kind of tells random nonsensical, like even non-game related stories in general, even if he's not like, sometimes he'll do a stream that's no game and he'll just talk, kind of like we're doing right now, almost in a podcast style of format, except he's just doing it with himself and the chat in the background. It'd be as if we were doing like a live stream podcast or something, except instead of him having a few hundred or 1,000 people watching, we'd have like 3, and it'd probably be people who they just feel bad for us and they just turn it on and then go walk away is what it would be.
They all count the same. We love you just the same. But I think, I think about streamers a lot for whatever reason. I spend a lot of time on the road just thinking about stuff. So I watch a lot of them and think about a lot of them. So I've put a lot of thought into this, but I feel like, and maybe this is true more true about population humans in general. I feel like with the rise of streamers, like it sounds like from the way that you watch, you just like the guy. Like no matter what he was playing, you enjoy the way that he thinks about things, talks about things.
Yeah, and I didn't even discover him from the Smash stuff. I first found out who this dude was whenever I was looking for a walkthrough for a Legend of Zelda game, and I stumbled on one of his little playthrough things,
Yeah.
and watched the entire thing all the way through after I realized how funny this dude was.
Yeah.
And then that's how it became what it was. Like, it's very, not that it's easy to hook me into something, but once you've got me for life. It's that sort of hook and whatever the term is. Almost said hook and lateral, but that's not what we're talking about at
No,
all.
yeah, I get what you're saying though, but I think
Hook, line,
that
and sinker. That's
yeah,
what it is.
it speaks to kind of the point that I'm trying to make is like I think early on in the like rapid rise of Instagram, Twitter, Vine, whatever it was, like you're just trying to make funny stuff. You were trying to tell these stories, but I feel like it's now a lot. The talent is being an interesting person that has
Yeah.
interesting ways of looking at not have it doesn't matter if you've had like this crazy life, but it's I think gotten a lot harder to be someone that relates to people because you talk about the attention span. Like you have to talk in a certain way, you have to talk in a certain cadence. And it's interesting the people that like look at the analytics and understand how the YouTube algorithm or whatever it is
Yeah.
filters all this stuff through. Like there's this have you ever heard of the spiffing Brit?
No, not at all.
Okay, so he did a YouTube study and he created this video that if you watched it in the first, I think it was like 2 hours, you got a different version of the video than if you watched it after 2 hours.
Really?
And his theory was that you can manipulate the algorithm to if you're getting this massive influx, and it's still to this day, like there's nowhere to find those original 2 hours. They were gone forever. So we got this massive spike at 30 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, and YouTube started sending it to everyone because there were so many people that were like, "Oh man, I only have 2 hours to watch this." They're like I mean, he does well. He gets millions of views on his videos, but this one got like the normal amount of views he gets in a month in an hour. And it wasn't something unique. It wasn't like he was just explaining what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. It wasn't this groundbreaking thing, but I think it's
He
like
probably turned on his recorder or his live stream and started saying Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast. And all of a sudden the algorithm picked up on Mr. Beast and just said, "Oh, send it out. It's Mr. Beast." I'm just kidding.
but something like I mean that guy, he obviously understands how to manipulate the algorithm as well, but um I just think there's a lot more skill in doing something like that than there used to be. One, because the market's so saturated, you have to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it to get yourself out to the masses. But I just think
Well,
that's so
imagine being
fascinating.
somebody who was like a YouTube pioneer. Like, I think if I'm correct, I feel like the very first like big name on YouTube was Fred, the guy who gave himself the really high voice or whatever, and
Yes,
had just a bunch of
I forgot.
nonsense.
I
I
haven't
mean,
heard about him in forever.
but was he not? I mean, again, 2007, 2008, probably the first one who like everybody like knew about, blew up on YouTube.
Superstar. Yeah, he was the first one, and I don't think. I bet if you asked him now, and I have no clue where he is, but if you asked him now, I would guess he was just doing it because people were watching it. He wasn't like calculating when to
That's
release
the
it,
thing.
how to
You
release
weren't even
it.
getting paid to do that back then.
Right. It's crazy. It's
All right,
crazy.
sorry for the cut there. Mitchell had to use the bathroom, but we're
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Did not
It's that old
properly
man
plan.
prostate right there
I'm
for you.
telling
That
you, I
30-year-old prostate.
did not plan. I drank too much water and I'm like, oh man, I gotta pause here.
Is there a certain drink, or it doesn't even have to be a drink, I guess, that just opens the floodgates? You can't help, like, once you pee once, you're just done for the next few hours, and you're going to be in the bathroom once every 30 minutes.
The obvious answer is an ice cold Coors Light. That's the
Coors
obvious.
specifically?
Yeah, and I think the reason, well, Coors, Miller, any kind of light beer,
The mountains are blue, right? Is that what that is?
that's Coors Light. Yeah.
Okay,
And I
yeah.
think the reason is because it's so easy to drink. So you drink like 5 of them in 5 seconds and then you're just full. And then yeah. And then what do they call it? Break the seal. And
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what it is, breaking the seal.
Yeah. So Saturday, I mean, I think I had my first Coors Light at like 8:30 in the morning. So yeah, it was a lot of trips to the bathroom yesterday.
Yeah, for me, it's always the third cup of coffee, and I don't know why the third cup, but something about the third cup of coffee that
Yeah.
it's everything, I guess, is built up over the course of a few hours, and then it's just again every 30 minutes, and it feels like it's maybe this is just me, but it's like heavy urine. Like I can really maybe I'm getting too thick into the weeds here,
I
but
think
like
so.
it
I
it
think
comes
so.
out very thick. It's a
It's
thick pee.
mixing a water, dude.
No, I actually, I usually, I double fist my coffee in the water. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe there's just so much fluid going in me that it can't handle it all.
I don't know why that just made me think of, we have something that we're training for. I'm running another half marathon to
Okay.
prepare to run a marathon at the end of the year.
Really?
I don't know why.
Mitchell Page, the marathon runner, huh?
Yeah. A couple years ago in Charleston, Laura signed up for a half marathon, and like right as it was coming up, the person she was doing it with backed out or whatever. So she's like, "Oh, I'm not going to run it." So I said, "I'll run it with you."
And you hadn't trained at all.
Zero training. Uh, we finished. I think we averaged like 9 minutes. It was fine. Did well, but it was horrible. I was sore for a month. And I don't know how I've allowed myself to be convinced to do this again, but we're running the Carmel Marathon in April.
You
And
said end of the year, so you're doing this in 2 months?
well, the half
Oh,
marathon
okay, okay.
is in preparation for something longer at the end
What
of the
is
year.
the long marathon that you'll be partaking in?
Don't know, but we're looking for one that's going to be full. I ran one of those Spartan races. You ever
Or
heard of
like the
this?
Warrior Dash type stuff?
Yeah, they've got like obstacles and stuff.
Yeah.
And that one was it was 13 point a couple miles with 26 obstacles. My calves cramped up so bad. The last obstacle is like this pit of mud that's like 4 feet, but it took me a long time to get there. So by the time I'm there, like the edge is so slippery because all the water and mud
Ugh.
and my
Probably felt like you
calves.
were diving in quicksand.
Honestly, it felt pretty good because the water was chilly and you were hot. We were in South Carolina in the summer.
Okay.
It was like 4 million degrees. And I was trying to get out of there, but my calves were cramping so bad that every time that I would go to like vault myself up, because 4 feet, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. 4 feet is up pretty good on my
Yeah.
body. I got to jump out of there. My calves would cramp up. So I thought I was going to die in this water.
Ugh.
Those are my two experiences with a half marathon, and now I've allowed myself again to be convinced to try it again. I have no idea why I did that.
Speaking of dying, and this this is just not
Interesting
it's not
transition.
it's not the best way to transition,
That's
but this
this
is
is
something I think I was going to talk about if all three of us were on here, but honestly, maybe you and I can have this will be how we end the show. Maybe
okay.
I may even cut it out altogether if it's a bad thing to
Okay.
talk about.
Okay.
But what is going on with these plane crashes? We have, of course, let's
Yeah,
start
man.
real quick. There's been three, and there's a couple ways to look at it, right?
There's been 3.
Yeah, so one, of course, was the one with the passenger plane and the helicopter. That was the one that started all of this. There was an ambulance plane. There's a name
In
for it. I don't
Philly?
know. In Philly, of course, that just fell down after takeoff.
I knew
And then
those
there
2.
was do what?
I knew those 2. I didn't know there was a
I
3rd.
think the third one was like a small. I want to get this right because I don't want to say it. I think it was out in California,
Jeez, man.
but it was just like a little. I don't even. I'm not even gonna try to say what it was or even try to find it while we're doing this. But nonetheless, the fact that all of this is happening so like within like 72 hours, right? I had somebody tell me today, and I think there might be some truth to this, that yes, this happens all the time, especially with smaller planes, but nobody reports on it. But they're doing it now because it's like the hot topic or whatever. And so maybe it's not that big of a deal, and the media is just blowing it out of proportion. But as somebody who's afraid of planes myself and being on planes, I don't know. Is something spooky going on here?
Yeah, the first one is like the scariest by far. The
Yeah,
helicopter.
just the circumstance of everything
I
that took
think
place.
it's crazy that it's taken that long for something, and this is a horrible thing to say, but apparently that was a really like that it was used often, that path for helicopters.
Yes.
And their flight deck is supposed to be 300 feet, but they were flying at 400 feet, which isn't that much different. And that difference ends with them colliding with a plane. Feels like we could change the path up a little bit. Like if 100 feet is going to make that much of a difference, maybe just like take a little bit of a left somewhere before that. Like, what are we doing?
Left.
Yeah, what are we doing? It's so scary. I'm not.
And here's the thing. And I know planes are safe, you know, and the amount of people that die in a plane crash versus a car accident every year it's night and day, a big difference. I'm aware of that. But here's what I don't understand. I know that crashes are few and far between, but why can't we figure out how to, like, how do we not have the technology, I should say, if I think that's the best way to put it, to where when these planes crash, that it's, you know, not always going to be the end of everybody's life on the plane, you know? Like, why have we not figured out a better way to crash a plane? Maybe I might be asking too much or an impossible question to answer, but it just, like, it's horrible thinking that, like, there's not many ways that you can die, I guess, to where, like, whenever it's happening, like, you can kind of see it coming 30 seconds before it happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, but you got to, like, a plane is flying 400 miles per hour, 300 miles per hour when it's that low, and even faster when it's high. And you're falling from, I mean, they were at 400 feet in the air. There's not a lot of buildings that are 400 feet tall. Like, that's a tall building. And you're doing so at 400 miles an hour. I just don't think there's any way to. I've called them flying metal death traps a bunch of times on this podcast because that's what they are. But it doesn't, like, I'm not scared to fly right now, but it is scary. Just, I don't know. And I think the worst part,
I think what happens, just to put myself, if I were in that position, like, this is how I think every time. Again, it's been 15 years, but whenever I was that young, still getting on everything, I always think about, like, okay, I am putting my life in the pilot's hands and whoever maintained the plane's hands, all that sort of thing. You give up complete control, and whatever happens, you pray that you get there safely. And, you know, 99.9% of the time you are, but, you know, you've given your life and the ability to be in control of it. And I guess ultimately we aren't in control of our life in general, depending on how you look at, you know, life from a bigger perspective, whatever it may be. But that's just one of the most terrifying things for me, is you giving up your control to something else, to somebody else, if you will.
Yeah. And we had a funny conversation actually about this weekend. Not funny, but think about how many times when you're driving, you just kind of, like, maybe zone out for a second. You just kind of veer off onto the bumper strip thing.
Yeah, like the part where you hear, like, going,
exactly. Think like you're just kind of thinking whatever, and you just slightly veer off that way. That's got to happen to pilots too, right? Like,
but they also rely, and again, I'm just speaking from, you have autopilot helping out a lot, especially once you get up above a certain
but still,
altitude,
like,
and stuff.
Think about how many times that they're up there like, oops, glad that didn't turn into something way worse.
I bet they're up there joking, like they're up there talking about things that they would never say in front of the passengers.
That's what I mean, and they're like, oh, good thing nobody back there knows that just happened, because that could have been bad. It's obviously it's the worst thing ever. And I think the worst part about it is, like, everyone just jumps to conspiracy. Like, there's a time and a place to talk about what happened, why it happened. But I had this conversation again with a couple people, and it's one that I try to get out of as fast as possible. But, like, what do you think happened? Do you think it was set up? And I'm like, dude, 70 people are dead. Like, just think about that for 5 seconds before we start talking about this. It's just, I think,
especially
Twitter, you're
when
trying
you
to
see
get
that kids. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of them, you know, were figure skaters and that sort of thing. But just to think that you're going to do something that you love, or you just got finished doing something that you love. I think they were returning home from their the tournament that was being held in Kansas, whatever it was. But that's, like, you're not thinking about that potentially happening on your way back to where you live.
Yeah, it's just awful. Just makes you hopefully reflect on the good stuff that you got going in your life, because you never know
Yeah.
when something could happen. So this is a sad way to end the show, but yeah, it's just say some prayers for those people. And I know that doesn't people say the thoughts and
People
prayers or
say,
whatever doesn't do
yeah.
anything, but that's really all you can do. And it just is. I don't know. I think we're the world is ready for a fresh week. I think we got a good
Yeah.
week ahead of us. Hopefully, some good things happen for you at work. I'm praying some good things. May have some news on the work front that we'll
Okay.
share and talk about
Whenever we do another
at a
one of
later
these.
time. Yeah, at a later time. But need some good news this week, and um, that's all I got, dude. That's all I
Yeah.
got.
You see, and that's why and again, I'm going to keep it in the episode, but I wish I'd had remembered to talk about it sooner or held on to it because I don't like to end on a sour note or a sad note or whatever, that sort of thing. But it is something that I'm always thinking about because I hate planes, as I mentioned. And of course, one of the first things I tell my wife, I'm not getting on a plane anytime soon. Not that I mean, it feels like the safest time to get on a plane probably is right after a crash. It's kind of like they say the best time to go visit a place is right after they had a terrorist attack or something like that. It's very weird to think about, but like that's when they're going to have the highest safety measures and stuff going on, right?
Yes,
So it's a very weird thing to think about.
I know it.
But with that being said, we'll wrap up this lovely, lovely edition of Out of Touch that it was. I don't know who decided to click on this today, especially those. If you are still subscribed and you've just kind of been chilling and all of a sudden you see this pop into your little YouTube notifications, thank you. Thank you for, just keeping us in your subscriptions, because you could have very well been like, oh, these losers are done. They just wanted to abandon their cute little Out of Touch podcast. But no, we're still here. We're busy. We're doing a lot of things. We'll put out another episode every once in a while. And hopefully our friend Mr. Shooty can join us again too, because we'd like to catch up with him and figure out what he's up to. The traveling nomad that is one
Yeah,
Dustin
right.
Shooty.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So that'll do it. We'll wrap that up. We'll wrap this up. And of course, if you want more of this, check out In Touch Monday, Wednesday, and Friday going on at HoosierIllustrated.com. That's where you will always find me for the foreseeable future. And Mitchell Page hops on there every once in a while as well, talking Indiana football, Indiana basketball, all that good stuff. So until our next episode, who knows when it'll be, this has been episode number 64 of the Out of Touch podcast right here on YouTube. We'll talk to you next time, my friend, our friend, whatever you are.